How much strength do you think you can carry over from one round to the next? 3, 4, 5 maybe? Nah, how about 50? Today, we are going to see just how much strength we can carry over from one round to the next using the new Northern Realms Archgriffin card. What's up, everybody? It's Lids, and we are back for some more Gwent, the Witcher-themed card game, and today we are going to push the limit to see just how much strength can we carry over from one round into the next. How are we going to do it? One word: Archgriffin. We will be playing as Northern Realms using the Stockpile leader ability, which allows us to give additional charges to our units. It also adds 17 provisions, which is a very high amount, so we can load up on some fantastic cards in here. And the general idea is that we are going to be abusing the mechanic for this Archgriffin card here, which is a new card from the Way of the Witcher expansion. At the end of the round, we can shuffle it back into our deck, keeping the amount of boosts on it. Normally, any sort of carryover from one round into the next, things like Resilience, where a card stays on the playing field from one round into the next one, it would lose all of its boosts. However, the Archgriffin is one of the few ways in which you can carry over those boosts, and especially with the new +1 seasonal event where we can double up on many of our cards that apply boosts, we can load a crazy amount of boosts on this card and carry it over, so the sky is the limit. So we'll lead off with Oneiromancy, and this will give us a lot of flexibility, being able to play whatever card we want from our deck. This is one of the ways to guarantee that after we boost the Archgriffin a lot and it goes back into our deck, we can still make sure that we can play it in subsequent rounds. Next, we have the Archgriffin itself, and like I said, this is going to be the primary target of our boost, and it is going to be the key component of this deck here. Next, we have Donimir of Troy. This will be our defender card. This will be helpful for protecting some of the units that are vulnerable but capable of doing a lot of that boosting, especially when we create copies of them in the +1 seasonal event. Also, we may be able to hide the Archgriffin behind it as well in order to give ourselves time to charge it up, and or make sure that our opponent doesn't use something like a Geralt of Rivia to destroy it before we get the chance to hide it back in our deck at the end of the round. Next, we will have Priscilla, and she will allow us to give +1 charge, or possibly even 2 charges if she is boosted herself, to other units, and this will be a way to set up our other units that will be doing the boosting more directly. Next, we have Nenneke, and she can provide 4 boosts herself. Those are charges, and therefore Priscilla can give her more of that boost ability, as well as our leader ability can also allow her to boost even further, so she will be one of our key setup cards. Alzur's Double Cross allows us to play the highest unit from our deck. Assuming that we have boosted up the Archgriffin, this is another way to guarantee that we will be able to play the Archgriffin from our deck, in case we don't have something like Oneiromancy or the Archgriffin directly in our hand. Next, we have Dandelion, which is a fantastic combination with Priscilla, because whenever an allied unit gains charges, we boost it by 1 for each charge gained. So if we can hide Dandelion and Priscilla behind something like Donimir of Troy, then we will be able to boost a crazy amount from that. Next, we have the Botchling, and in its original form as the Botchling, it will deal damage to the highest enemy unit every turn. However, we can also swap it around into the Lubberkin in order to boost the weakest of our own units at the end of our turn. This likely won't be applying directly to the Archgriffin, assuming that we are doing a lot of the boosting on the Archgriffin. Very unlikely that it'll be our lowest card out there, but there are a few ways in which this might still be able to benefit us with Archgriffin boosts, and we'll talk about that later on. Next, we have Vysogota of Corvo, and this is another card that is amazing at boosting. We want to be giving it as many charges as possible so that it can apply as many boosts as possible, and so this will be the primary target for Priscilla. Then we have Strenger, who is not someone who uses charges, but does of course have the ability to provide boosts, at the very least to the right side of her, but if she herself is boosted, she will also boost to the left as well. So ideally we're playing her next to the Archgriffin. However, there are still some ways we can benefit from boosting other units as well, and we'll talk about that in a bit. Next, we have Egmund, who's very similar to Strenger, only boosts to the right side of himself and can deal a little bit of damage. We technically should try to play him in the melee row so that we can use his 3 damage ability if and when we need it, but he will still boost even when he's in the range row. Then we have Coen, and this is where things get really interesting. This is another one of the new Way of the Witcher cards, and Coen is capable of boosting all other units that have the same power as Coen by the amount that Coen is boosted. So the potential here is almost limitless. Ideally, what we do is we boost Coen to an astronomical amount, and also have the Archgriffin boosted by that same amount, and therefore when we trigger Coen's ability, he will double the amount of strength on the Archgriffin, So that does require some quick math here, and especially with all the charges that we will be using to boost people, we're not going to have a lot of time to do that mental math, but we'll see if we can pull it off. Next, we have Reinforcements. This is a special card that will allow us to create a copy of a bronze unit. The idea here is that we have some other bronze units that we've yet to see that will also be able to provide some boosts, so this might be a way to create extra copies of those. Next, we have Knighthood, which provides 6 boosts split randomly across all units in a certain allied row. It is random who those boosts apply to, so it is a little bit tricky, especially if we're trying to do something like balance out the boost with a card like Coen. But if we have the Archgriffin back in a certain row, then it's always a decent option to throw something like Knighthood back there. Next, we have a couple of Swallows, and these are a pretty straightforward card to directly boost a unit by 6, so similar to the Knighthood, just a little bit more predictable. Next, we have a couple of Aretuza Adepts, and these cards are a bronze unit, so one of the ones that we could potentially create extra copies of with Reinforcements, and they give additional charges to an allied unit, and we were talking earlier about how we have cards like Nenneke, Corvo, who can do a lot of boosting with those charges. Next, we have a couple of Tenerian Drummers, and these are a couple more of those bronze units that we could benefit from having additional ones out on the playing field with, because they directly boost the units to the right, so similar to Egmund. Then we have a couple of Griffin Witcher Rangers. These are also new cards, and also similar to Coen, in that they can transfer their boosts to another allied unit. Unlike Coen, that means that we are moving the boost from this unit onto the other one, whereas Coen will actually keep the boost himself as well, so not as good as Coen, but another one where the potential is extremely high if we can get the math done correctly and transfer over those boosts to the Archgriffin. Next, we have a couple of Tridam Infantries, and these are normally a staple of my Northern Realms decks because they are great targets for being boosted. We'll keep them in for that reason, but that does mean that in some ways they are competing with Archgriffin for being the target of those boosts, so this is largely here in case we do find ourselves without the Archgriffin and we're looking for somewhere else to put our boosts, then we can put them on the Tridam Infantries. Then lastly, as we start to run low on our provisions, we'll throw in a Kaedweni Sergeant here. It's mostly a card that we're going to try to make sure that we don't have in our hand, because it is definitely the weakest one here, but it does have a little bit of boosts, and so worst comes to worst, we play it and we can use it to boost something like the Archgriffin, or one of the other cards that can transfer boosts over to the Archgriffin. So that's the idea for the deck. We will be playing in the +1 seasonal event mode, because that will allow us to have a copy of cards like Dandelion, Corvo, Priscilla, cards that are already extremely powerful, but if you create another copy of them, the amount of boosting that we can do just goes off the charts. So you could certainly use this deck in standard mode, but we're going to go in +1 to see just how far we can push the limit. Okay, so we're going to go against monsters here. And let's see what we have in our hand to begin with. We do not have the Archgriffin, nor do we have any way of getting it at the moment, so I think that is top priority to make that happen. Don't really want the Kaedweni Sergeant. Griffin Witcher Ranger is okay for transferring those boosts. Worst comes to worst, we could use our boosts on Tridam Infantry for the moment, but we would like to find some way to get the Archgriffin, so let's get rid of a Tenerian Drummer. We got Coen, so we have some of our setup cards, but we don't have a way to get the Archgriffin at the moment, so either what we could do is we could make it work with Tridam Infantry and boost this one like crazy to deal damage whenever we do apply those boosts, or we just make it a quick round, maybe even take a loss in round 1 and just hope that we can find something like an Oneiromancy in order to guarantee that we get the Griffin, or draw into the Griffin directly. So, our opponent has played a card that gets boosted by us from Thrive, so if we play anything higher than a 1, in this case, or 4 in this case, then that card will get stronger. That is a good long-term card to play. I do think, though, that what we do this time is maybe we get out the Tridam Infantries, and we'll use those for our boosts, at least for this round, and then we'll basically thin out our deck a little bit more in hopes of making it more likely for us to pick up the Griffin in, ideally, round 2, and then we can carry it over into round 3. Apiarian Phantom is also a really good card in this game mode. To have 2 of those, they're getting boosted every turn, assuming that they don't use their damaging ability. So that is good to see in some ways. If we are expecting to kind of throw away this round a little bit, then perhaps we're okay with our opponent playing some of their better cards, like the Apiarian Phantom. So we could maybe do something like Knighthood here, I feel like is one of our other not as strong options, because, well, it will certainly boost Tridam Infantry, and that will be helpful to deal some damage with it. But because it's not a controlled boost, it's a little bit unpredictable. So when we do have the Archgriffin out there, I'm thinking we will want to try to find a way to have more targeted boosts than just that. Unfortunately, it did not take out this Apiarian Phantom. Almost did. That would have been ideal. That way, we would have stopped it from getting boosted every turn. But it's just going to be harder to catch now. We are technically tied at the moment. So we'll see how our opponent reacts to this. Ooh, okay, they play a Death Wish unit. Which is interesting because that implies that they are anticipating that they will, of course, destroy that Death Wish unit. Which implies that they are planning on playing another card. Which we are thinking of just doing one more and then finishing this round. So is there a way in which we could speed ahead of our opponent really quickly and, yes, force them to play that other card? Possibly, but I think most of these other cards are the types of setups that we really want to have when we do have the Archgriffin. The one exception to that being the other, Tridam Infantry. So it's not great for this round here, but in many ways we are deliberately just getting rid of our cards that are not directly helping the Archgriffin in round 1 in anticipation of getting it in round 2. Fingers crossed for that, of course. Okay, and fortunately our opponent did actually play an additional card here. So that means that, well, we will have a 1-card advantage in round 2. So either we play all those cards and we have that advantage, or we might find that our opponent passes a little bit early there. And now we hope that we draw into some way of getting that Archgriffin. But nothing yet. We can redraw 2 cards. Kaedweni Sergeant? You, maybe? No, that turns into reinforcements. I don't think we want 2 Griffin Witcher Rangers. Let's try getting rid of one of you. No, and we get the Botching. Okay, so we can try to win this round here with what advantage we have. And Phoenix is a great card for carryover. In many ways, we are trying to create a better version of the Phoenix with our Archgriffin. But I think that probably does suggest that our opponent is likely to only play one more card and then pass early in this round here, because this is their carryover. So in that case, this could be a relatively straightforward win here if they only play one more card for round 2. How do we put out just enough strength that we can still beat them without throwing away any cards that we'd like to have for round 3? I'm thinking the Botchling could be good, because if we have 2 of those, then that means that we can damage the highest unit twice, which will lower them down to 3. They may very well try to target the weaker of the 2 Botchlings, which, when they hover over it like that, certainly makes me feel as though that is likely to happen. Going with the Rot Fiend, which does seem like likely one of their weaker cards, and therefore, again, I think still sending the message that they are likely to pass on their next turn. That is, in many ways, just a throwaway card from them, I would think. So what do we go for next here? Trying to deliberately choose a card that is not likely to be something we'd want to have with the Archgriffin. Of course, ideally we would have the Archgriffin in round 2, so that way we can carry over its boost into a subsequent round. If we only have it in round 3, then in many ways that defeats the purpose, but just taking it one step at a time here, I think maybe we go with something like the Tenerian Drummer, because we already have Egmund, who's very similar, or we could even go Egmund and save Tenerian Drummer. Let's go with that, and then we might be able to reinforcements the Tenerian Drummer later. Let's switch over the Botchling into the Lubberkin, because that means that it'll go from 1 strength up to 5. If we're thinking short term, that is preferable. And I'm expecting our opponent to pass here, but we'll see. They may have other ideas. We have a pretty sizable lead at the moment, and some sustained damage and boosting, so it would be fairly hard to catch us. Yeah, they do pass. Okay, so that means that we've already won this round. We could, however, still play one more card and then draw 3 going into the next round, and we'd be at our maximum of 10. So if we want to throw away one of our weaker cards, we could make that happen now. But I'm not necessarily sure that I'm seeing anything that fits that description. Maybe even reinforcements, in which case we probably would have wanted to have gone Tenerian Drummer and then reinforcements on the Tenerian Drummer, because at the moment reinforcements doesn't have a target at all. So for that reason, I think we just pass. We just leave this as is. And we will see what we draw into, of course. That will affect what we choose to switch out. But reinforcements is looking like a decent option there. And there is the Archgriffin. Now we get it in round 3. So, I mean, sure, we could boosted now, but in many ways that ship has already sailed. So, in that case, what would we like? I think you can help us get charges for Nenneke, so that does work well. This does work too. I think this might be fine as is, to tell you the truth. I mean, the one thing I would say is if we could get a blocker with our defender, Corvo, that would be ideal, but... Oh, Oneiromancy. Okay, yes, we actually could make that happen then. Okay, and here is their carryover with 2 Griffins, in fact. And when you transform into the Phoenix, you're not technically playing a Phoenix. Does that mean you only get 1, or do you actually get 2 from the +1? I don't know. We'll have to see. So we go first here, and I'm thinking we probably do lead off with Oneiromancy into Donimir of Troy. Technically speaking, it means we have 1 less turn in which to do all of our boosting, but I do like making sure that our boosters are safe and don't immediately get destroyed, because of course, then we have little to no boosting. It does also crowd out our range row, which is where I think that most of our boosters will be. They follow in suit with their own defender. Hold on. Defender for monsters makes me a little wary of eventually even Keltullus, but we'll see about that. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here. The first booster that we should likely play would be Corvo, because every turn he gains 2 boosts, whereas other boosters are generally only gaining 1. Let's go with Corvo here, and with just 3 strength, he's already usually one of our more vulnerable units. We'll use our leader ability to give him some additional charges. And then the copy of him with only 1 strength is even more vulnerable. The risk here is that if our opponent has any way of dealing damage to an entire row, then they could still take out this Corvo here. But of course, any targeted damage would need to hit the defenders first. Yeah, they're using special cards, which is, again, perhaps a sign that they are going to be using Keltullus here, which would actually be a pretty solid counter to what we're going for, because we are going to have a lot of units out there. So, yikes, that does make me a little bit nervous here. Let's get out Priscilla, I think is the next card to go down, because this will give charges to those Corvos. You'll need a turn to do that, though. And we will likely want to boost her a little bit in order to make sure that she is inspired. So let's make sure that we are doing that with this Priscilla, who is not currently boosted. Okay, and then we don't have any other ability to boost this Corvo here. I mean, we could eventually use this Corvo to do it, but we do, technically speaking, want to save as many of those charges as possible for the big ticket items like Archgriffin. There is Keltullus, as anticipated. Oh, man. So yes, that gets rid of one of our defenders and our other Corvo. So the thing here is that now we are looking at 4 units to 4 units. We do have a lot of ability to empower our units with the things that we have out right now, so that is nice. It's just that any additional units that we play are likely to get destroyed. So, okay. This is a tricky one. This is a very tricky one, in fact. Aretuza Adept, even if you get destroyed, you can still give some boosts, or at least give charges. So technically speaking, this does mean that our next card to go down would be this Aretuza and this Corvo. So, tell you what, that might have been a mistake. We'll give additional charges to Corvo. And Corvo, this may be your last chance to do that boosting. So, I think what we ideally should have done would have been... well, I mean, we'll give him a charge, but he's going to go down next turn, in all likelihood, unless our opponent does play another unit, which is possible. No, they will be loading up on the special cards. So you'll go down, and you will go down. What I was going to say was that we should have done something like play the Griffin Witcher Ranger, something that was lower than a 3 to make sure that Corvo stayed alive, even with the Keltullus. That way we would have burned the Griffin Witcher Ranger, or the copy of the Griffin Witcher Ranger. So it is tricky, because obviously everything from here on out is a unit. So anything that we play will get destroyed. It's just a matter of, do we want the unit we play to get destroyed, or do we want Aretuza Adept to get destroyed? And that depends on which card we play here. I think we play Anna Strenger here. Oh, but she's still not going to get boosted. We are in tough shape here. we need someone who will do the boosting. So I think what we do here is we boost this Nenneke and just get her up high enough. And now the ones that will get destroyed will be this Nenneke and this Aretuza Adept. Now at least we can transfer over the charges from Priscilla onto Nenneke, and we can have some self-sustaining boosts, even if we are having to throw away our units every turn from the Keltellus triggering. We'll see if this can work. Okay, well, you damage, yes, but we had a shield, so that it didn't actually deal any damage. Okay. So now, yes, we lost the 2 units we were expecting to lose, which means that we now have 4 relatively high units here, which is a good thing, because that means that I think these are the cards we want to have out here. Anything that we play will likely be the ones that get destroyed. I think we go with the Griffin Witcher Rangers. Let's deliberately play it in the range row, where it will not boost itself very much. And then we will give additional charges to Nenneke, and then with Nenneke, we will boost everyone who we want to keep. And if a Griffin Witcher Ranger were to survive, then we could deliberately boost it next turn. Let's give charges to you, and then we can boost further. So if our opponent does play another unit, and then Keltellus does not trigger, and these guys stay alive, then we can boost one of them, transfer over those boosts to someone else, and then focus on, again, maximizing the boosts on the cards that we do have out there. We are winning against our opponent right now. They also do have those saved up Phoenixes over here, and they don't want to trigger them right now, because that would mean creating additional units, which would mean they'd have more units than us, which means that Keltellus would be triggering on their side. But what about now? Coen does have Zeal with his abilities, so technically speaking, if we could save up our boosts, and then go for a last-minute Coen, trigger that on the same turn we play him, I think that is actually the best way to go, because even if he goes down, he can still boost other cards. So let's go for that. We'll be saving Coen, and technically speaking, Strenger could still boost these cards here, even if she is going to be destroyed. There's some long-term benefit to that. Just want to make sure that we're not boosting her so much that she surpasses Nenneke. She doesn't generate charges, and therefore is not one that can benefit from being alongside Priscilla, and benefit from our Stockpile leader ability as well. So we'll see what our opponent does. As interesting as it was to play with Keltellus recently in this seasonal event, to be honest with you, it was not very effective. I don't know, it's nifty, yes, it is fun to play as, but it is also extremely frustrating because at this point in time, they're running out of cards in their hand, and they might only have units remaining. Or at least at this point, I suspect they will probably start to need to play units. Yes, they do. And now that means that they will have more units than us. Or at least the same amount, now that we've played 2 more. So that means Keltellus will not trigger. So that does mean that Strenger will continue to boost, and that's fine. That is beneficial for us. So let's see. I think we still wait on Coen. We still want to give the charges to Nenneke. And my question here is, do we try to also boost this Strenger to the point where she is inspired and then starts boosting Priscilla as well? We will need to play additional units, yes. I think we might actually go with the Archgriffin here, because it is not one of our better units in this circumstance. And so let's actually boost this Strenger slightly more, because this does not apply any additional boost to the units that we are sure to keep. Also, give you more charges here. So, we'll boost you a little bit higher, try to get you to the point where you are inspired. But then we actually want to make sure that we still get Strenger, to the point where she's higher than these other cards here. Because, oh, should have boosted you even more. Because now we run the risk of, okay, if our opponent does not play any additional units, we are going to get 2 burn from Keltellus. This will definitely go, and then it's a question of will it be the Archgriffin or will it be this Strenger, and we would definitely want to keep this Strenger because she's continuing to boost, whereas this Archgriffin does not have any long-term value. So we'll see what they do. The fact that they did play a unit last time does suggest that they may be out of special cards. They may need to play more units. Their leader ability, they would normally use this on Jetloft Higher Vampire, and it would come back from the graveyard onto the playing field, but they would create an Ekimara in the process. That means more units, which they don't want to do right now. Consumption does help, yes. However, because you are still playing a copy of the Barghest, means that I think we're only going to have the Archgriffin go here, because you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cards, and we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then you just got rid of the Archgriffin. So that means that was actually key. We didn't have to worry about either Strenger or the Archgriffin going there. So I think now we go Tenerian Drummer. Let's play it here to make sure that this Strenger is getting boosted so that it surpasses this Archgriffin. And in order to make that happen, we actually need to boost this Strenger slightly more. So Tenerian Drummer will boost it up to an 8. Strenger will boost this Archgriffin up to a 7. That's fine. And then I think we save the remaining Nenneke charges in hopes of a last-minute Coen play. We don't have quite as many charges as we might have liked for that, but our lead is actually extending here. We do have one more card that we've played than our opponent. They have 2 remaining, whereas we only have 1, so let's see what they can do with this round. More consumption. That does make sense. It will further limit the amount of cards that amount of units they have on their side. But again, it does create a copy still, and because it's not a Zeal ability there, it means you can't consume immediately, which means the Keltullus is not going to be hurting us this time, it doesn't seem. And Barghest can only consume when you have dominance, meaning you have the highest card out here, and actually Donimir is the highest right now, or tied with... Oh no, Priscilla is with 15. So now we play Coen in the melee row, and even if Coen does get destroyed by Keltullus, that is fine. What we want to do is we want to make sure that we get you tied with other units here and pass those boosts to someone else. Ideally, one of the big cards that we are definitely going to keep. So let's get you up to either 12 or 15. And we can get you up to 12. Then we will use your ability now. It will boost Donimir further. Just trying to see if maybe there was any other alternative. I mean, ideally we would have had a bunch of things balanced out at the same amount of boost, but we just didn't quite have enough charges to make that happen. But there go the boost to Donimir. And Keltullus is likely to destroy this Coen and this Tenerian Drummer. That's fine. So that's the kind of thing that we want to do. Just we want to be targeting the Archgriffin, and we want to do that in round 1 or round 2, and then use something like Oneiromancy or Alzur's Double Cross to carry the Archgriffin over into round 2 or round 3 for huge carryover value. You Glusty Warp to destroy 1 power unit. You do have several of them. Oh, actually, I didn't even realize that triggers or destroys even our own 1 power units. But that does also mean that you're bringing Detloff back. And when you use your leader ability to do that, you also bring Detloff back. So it's going to be difficult for you to minimize the number of cards on your side. You can use some consumption, yes, but you actually destroyed one of your consumption units with Glusty Warp there, because it was one of the ones with 1 strength. So you are very close to us here, but you are actually burning yourself with Keltullus, and therefore we take the victory. So, yes, looks like there is a Keltullus incoming, and in fact, there was, and fortunately we had just enough time to plan accordingly and adapt our strategy. Unfortunately that time, though, we did not get the Archgriffin in round 1 or round 2, only got it at the very end, so we couldn't do the carryover play. Okay, so we're going against Scoia'tael, and that looks like movement Scoia'tael. It is extremely powerful, so it's going to be a tough matchup for sure. The other problem with it is that it can potentially disrupt some of our cards that need to be in a certain row, like, say, Dandelion here, though my eyes do light up when I see that we already have Archgriffin. That is big. Alzur's Double Cross will help us in round 2 or round 3 to get it back. So let's see, how else can we maximize the boost here? Let's get rid of Kaedweni Sergeant. We can swallow it. We can reinforcements the Tenerian Drummer, but I'm not sure that's a huge benefit here. Nenneke is definitely much better. That benefits well with Dandelion. Maybe we swap out the Botchling as well. And we can use the Griffin Witcher Ranger to transfer over some boosts from you to the Archgriffin. So, let's see. What is the order in which we want to make our plays here? The problem is we have several cards, Dandelion and Nenneke and the Aretuza Adept, that need to be in the range row. And as soon as we play them, our opponent can use either their leader ability or probably other cards that they have to bump them over to the melee row, in which they can do precisely nothing. So that is problematic. I think for that reason we lead off with Tenerian Drummer, because it can work whichever row it ends up in, even if our opponent decides to move it. And then we see, well, if you're going with the dwarves tend to be armor and damage, but not necessarily that much movement. So that is a little bit encouraging. You try getting out the Archgriffin early and put it where it can get boosted by the Tenerian Drummer. We will, of course, make a copy of the Archgriffin, and as long as one of them survives, then we're looking pretty good there. But actually, let's double check. Alzur's double cross, at this point, I think would give us Donimir, which means we could get a defender, and that could help us block many of those things that could be an issue. So I think we do that. Let's make it happen. So there is Donimir. And this one will have only 1 strength. We could potentially even boost that Donimir to make it a little bit tankier. We'll leave it here. The problem with this is that ideally we would keep Donimir in the range row to prevent our opponent from doing things like taking out Nenneke or Dandelion or the Aretuza Adept. Okay, so they are actually doing a lot of setup here with the Hawker Smuggler. This is the interesting thing with this deck that we are running right now. If we get Archgriffin out, then we can actually just load up on the boost in this round, and we could overinvest. We could play far more cards than our opponent. As long as we are continuing to boost the Archgriffin, then we are still benefiting from that, assuming that we can carry it over into round 2 or round 3 and find a way to play it. We did use Alzur's double cross, but if we can get Oneiromancy, we can still make it happen. So I think for that reason, let's start getting the boosters out, and then we'll get Archgriffin. So why don't we get Nenneke, and with Nenneke, we can now use our leader ability, get more charges. Probably should have given the additional charges to the one that had a little bit more life, just in case our opponent has a way of dealing that damage. Then we might get the Griffin Witcher Ranger in the melee row, and then that will be able to transfer some boosts over to the Archgriffin. But also Dandelion, giving additional charges, and the Aretuza Adept. Or actually, this is boosts when units get charges. So this will help boost Nenneke, but I don't think Dandelion is actually urgent at the moment. We might prefer to go with the Aretuza Adept. Let's do this now. Again, we're going to give all those charges to the Nennekes. Next, I'm thinking will be Griffin Witcher Ranger in the melee row, and then we'll play Archgriffin. Yeah, so this is fine. We are deliberately going to continue to play. Normally this would be a very bad idea, but I think we can still make this work, assuming we find a way to get Oneiromancy either in round 2 or round 3. So we do this. Let's give our charges to Nenneke. Let's give charges from the Aretuza Adepts to Nenneke. And then we can end this turn. Then what we do is we play the Archgriffin. And we could actually... I mean, we should get 2 Archgriffins in our deck after doing this, but see, does it matter which row we put them in? Technically, we should try to put them next to the Tenerian Drummers. We do this, and now what happens is we start boosting like crazy. And we may actually not have enough time to do all this boosting. We're going to focus on this Archgriffin here. Make this one our super boosted unit. We're going to boost this like crazy. Try to get to the point where all the carryover is enough that even with card disadvantage, we can still find a way to win a round. So let's do this. Let's do this. And then now we have to ask ourselves, do we continue to boost it? Which we could do through using the Aretuza Adept and Nenneke to keep doing this. They are also continuing to get boost with the Hawker Smuggler. 2 of those, mind you, so they have some carryover as well. So it's not only us that's getting stronger here. At the moment, we have 4 cards, though. I think that is a good place to stop, because what we do here, we pass now, and this will get boosted slightly more from this Tenerian Drummer here. We pass, and then we will pass immediately in round 2. That way we will get back up to 10 cards for round 3, and then we will be at full strength, and we will still have our Archgriffin hanging out in our deck. And these are some of the other cards we would like to have. Oh, we drew directly into it. Hold on. Hold on. Oh, we'd love to set up with these 2 and use that to boost the Archgriffin further, and then carry it over into round 3 with even more boosts. Oh, goodness. think at the very least, let's get rid of Tridam Infantry. And a Strenger is a good pickup. The Swallows, I mean, Dandelion is good for boosting Corvo, but is not directly going to help the Archgriffin. Coen is big. Ooh, this is a great hand. Maybe the Swallows, you can make the case, are not perfect here. The question is, though, do we do this right now and go for it in round 2, or do we save up and use it in just round 3? And we'd get 3 more cards. Let's try. So let's go... What should be first? Should it be Priscilla? No, I think it should technically be Corvo, because then we can give charges to Corvo. And we might actually want to boost Corvo with Corvo. And there is certainly the chance that our opponent could use leader abilities here to move Corvo into the melee row, and then that is a pretty good way to counter this, and I would argue they absolutely should do that. If they do, then I would just immediately pass. But they don't. Okay, so the thing is, as soon as they do that, we immediately want to pull the plug. So, do we go Archgriffin right now and immediately start boosting it? Or, ideally, we would play Priscilla next, get Corvo even stronger, and then from there, we start boosting Archgriffin. How greedy are we feeling? Let's try it. We're going big. And, again, we do have more charges with Corvo. We could use those to boost Corvo directly, make it so that they're less vulnerable. It's not so much the damage that I'm concerned about. Scoia'tael likely does have the means to do the damage, especially with this damage here. In fact, yeah, one of these Corvos is absolutely going down. So we probably should have done at least a little bit of boosting, but it's more so the movement, because all these cards need to be in the range row. Actually, Priscilla doesn't. She has formation. So I'm expecting you to take out one of the Corvos. If you split the damage between the two of them, that would be silly. But this can still work. It's obviously worse than what we had before, but that is why we were making such a big deal about having Donimir of Troy in the previous round. We could block a row and make sure that our opponent was not able to target a specific unit. And I see them hovering over Corvo like that, which makes me very suspicious that they are planning on doing something big here. So let's get the Archgriffin out. We will continue to make copies of it, so I suppose it's more likely for us to be able to play the Archgriffin again, but it is specifically this one that we want. So what we do is we give additional charges to Corvo, and with those charges, we further boost this Archgriffin. And we may leave it at that. We'll have to see. Technically speaking, if we were thinking that we'd have a little bit more time... Oh, that is a fantastic counter. Okay, so they had the answer. It does take a turn for this to trigger. But they drain an enemy unit by the amount of boost that it has. Right now, this has 36 boosts. So that would drop you down from a 41 to a 5. And you would go up to 41. So, we don't have any way of blocking that from happening. So this is going to be hilarious in that they are going to take all of our hard work and steal it with that one card. But you know what? All the more power to them. It does mean that we absolutely should not have played further in this round because, well, they're going to steal this round with that play. So I think we need to cut our losses here, and we'll watch and weep as they take away all the power of the Archgriffin. Assuming that they do so here. Don't see why they wouldn't. Of course, they have 2 different Regises they could do it with, and there it is. And they pass and say, yeah, I'll just take that strength. Don't mind if I do. And that does mean that all of our carryover, all of our setup is lost here, unfortunately. We have plenty of Archgriffin, so it's very likely that we will draw into one. And we have done that, and may, in fact, find more. But at this point, the Archgriffin is not of much use to us in round 3 when it doesn't have any boosts to carry over. So we'll try to get rid of it. And at this point, I mean, is this rescuable? Unlikely, to tell you the truth. Because they have 9 cards to our 7. So we're at card disadvantage. Our idea was that we were going to be okay with that, assuming that we could carry over the Archgriffin. But that didn't end up happening, or at least not the way that we wanted it to happen. So, well, if we look at our deck, are there any cards in here? Lots of Archgriffins, yes. Maybe a Dandelion could help out. Well, all we get is an Egmund. So we'll see what we can do here. But at this point, it is largely just an attempt to salvage a little bit of pride and not get completely crushed in round 3 after our opponent perfectly countered what our setup was. So let's see, we could go with Enna Strenger early. I do like that, because that means that she can boost herself. We give that a shot. Do we have any cards that would benefit from our leader ability giving them charges? Not unless we go Oneiromancy. Dandelion doesn't really. So yeah, I think in many ways our opponent has pulled the chair out from under us. Let's go with Enna Strenger here. Technically we'll play her in the melee row because Scoia'tael does have some things that can benefit from dealing more damage to units in a more distant row. So in the unlikely scenario that 1 damage is the difference, we'll play in the melee row here. And they did do a fair bit of Hawker Smuggler setups in round 1 as we were setting up our Archgriffin. So in theory, they may very well have some cards in their hand that are very highly boosted. They may have played some already, but at this point, some early Hawker Smugglers means they will likely have several more. So now I think our boost target becomes Coen, because with Coen, we can do that thing where we boost other cards that have the same amount of strength as him. But I'm not sure we're going to have enough boost to make that work to great effect here. We'll play him now. I am not loving playing him in between the Enna Strengers here, because that does mean that we are cutting off this Enna Strenger from further boost, so it's going to be harder to get her inspired. But I suppose, well, this Coen is not boosted yet, but they are on the same strength, so this almost worked. I'm thinking we might go Knighthood next turn, or go Tenerian Drummer in front of this Enna Strenger to get it further boosted. Nobleton Sentry benefits from the movement. Despite this being, in theory, a movement deck from our opponent, we've seen very little of the movement thus far, which is the strange part. That would have been the way that I expected them to do quick counters to our setup before, but maybe they knew that they were going to be leeching the power using their Regis, and so they were fine with us doing that? If so, then amazing foresight on their part. I think here, yeah, we might go either Egmund or Tenerian Drummer or Knighthood, basically anything to try to further boost this Enna Strenger and make it so that she is inspired. I think we want to lead off with Knighthood, though, when there are fewer units out there, so it's more likely for it to target this Enna Strenger, but as we are seeing, it's deciding to boost everyone except for that Enna Strenger, unfortunately. Okay, and here comes the movement. And when Nobleton Sentry is in the range row, that means that they'll be boosting themselves whenever they move. When it's in the melee row, such as this, it means that we will be taking damage when we get moved. That is something else to bear in mind, is that we are very much setting up these units with their positioning in mind, and that could get disrupted by something like a guerrilla tactics play. So remind me, what were we thinking we would do with the Oneiromancy? Were we saying Dandelion? And if so, who are we giving charges to? Not really anyone, so I don't think it's Dandelion. In fact, it may actually be the Botching. Why don't we continue to get more boosters out there? So Egmund next. And Coen, if we were to use this ability, would boost Enna Strenger, which would be nice, yes. But I'm wondering if... yeah, you know what? I actually think we have to do it. Because otherwise, Coen is going to surpass everyone else. I suppose maybe we could have swallowed on someone else to have them catch up to Coen, but I just didn't really see us ever having this Coen with the same amount of strength as anyone else anytime in the near future, or at all, potentially. And tell you what, that could be a way to target a boost on Enna Strenger specifically. That's what we should have done earlier, not the Knighthood. Forgot that we had this in our hand. So we might want to do that now. Otherwise, it's Oneiromancy into a Botchling, likely, which would be either damage the highest unit, which at the moment is this Nobleton Sentry, which has 1 armor, so one of the damages is not going to do anything. The damage from the second of the Botchlings would work. But I'm thinking that's not terribly urgent for that reason. So let's make sure that we get Enna Strenger boosted. We should have done that earlier. And now we've used the ability on this Coen, yes, but we can try to target this one now. Can't use the Swallow on this Coen, which would have been nice. But we'll just let him get further charged up. More Cat Witchers. Which means lots more movement and lots more boosting with these Dilblathana sentries. That's where you're seeing all these boosts coming from. And even after our opponent passes, their turn goes on for a solid 30 seconds afterward. And that damage is actually enough to get rid of one of our Egmunds. That is unfortunate. In many ways, they are functionally the same as Tenerian Drummers, so we could throw one in there. But at this point, I think what we want to do is try to find ways to guarantee that this Coen will have the same amount of strength as someone else on our side. At the moment, that's not really the case. So I think what we want to do is we want to Oneiromancy into the Botchling now. And let's play the Botchling here so we can get one that's getting boosted by Egmund over to the right. And we will want to swap over at least this Botchling on our next turn into the Lubberkin that starts boosting rather than dealing damage. There's Gezras, strongest of all those movement Scoia'tael cards, so perhaps could have expected that given how they are now unveiling all the movement. And again, just further extends how long it takes for them to finish their turns once they are done and have passed. Okay, so now we can put down Tenerian Drummer. Question is, what do we do with Coen? We do it now. Actually, we want to switch over the Botchling. That gives us another 5 strength unit. If we trigger Coen, it will also boost units on our opponent's side that have 5 strength. Do they have any that have 5 strength? I don't think so. So this looks like the right time to trigger it. Let's do that. That gets both of these, and then we can Tenerian Drummer, and I suppose we'll throw it here, there, everywhere. Of course, still not going to be enough. And we can deal damage with Egmund, because that is 3 damage in one turn, whereas leaving this unused would just boost the Lubberkin by 1. So we'll get rid of one of the Gezras, because those are quite strong, even if it only has 2 strength at the moment. And we'll pass from there. We won't swap over our Botchling, because that would bump it down from 7 strength to just 5. But yes, unfortunately, our opponent found a way to counter in the most wonderful way they could have countered our setup. They just decided, we'll take all of those boosts that you've used on your Archgriffin, and we'll use it for ourselves. So for all the ways that we could have gotten beaten, I'll take that one. So there's a look at what it can be like to try to boost the Archgriffin as much as possible and carry it over into subsequent rounds. We were able to get it up in the 50-40 strength range, yes. However, we did find that, unfortunately, our opponents tended to have ways to destroy it even after it had been boosted that much. It does, of course, attract a lot of attention when you have a card that is that strong. Thank you all for watching. If you liked the video, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and leave a comment down below to let me know, what do you think about the Archgriffin? Is it worth investing that much in it? Or do you think that, generally, our opponent is going to have enough ways to deal with it that our efforts will be in vain? Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.